Okay, we have covered basic select statement previously, and select statement is part of the so-called data manipulation language, DML, over here, and it corresponding to the CRUD operation. CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. And in terms of SQL data manipulation language, it corresponding to insert, select, update, and delete. The select statement we introduced previously only cover the 4 of the 6 clauses, the so-called big 6. We covered 4 of them. This is just an example. Select a certain column. It could be an expression. And we can also define alias, like bonus here for salary times 0.1. And from a table, so far we deal with only one table in a select statement. And then we can set the criteria such that we can select only the rows that we want from the table. And the result can be sorted, so we can use order by clause to kind of sort the result based on one or more column in ascending or descending order. And it's time for us to move on to insert, update, and delete. Select doesn't change the underlying data in the database tables, and insert, update, and delete do change the underlying data in the database table. Insert is adding new row, update is changing information in existing rows, and delete is actually just delete or remove one or more row from a table. And let's look at just insert statement. We will say insert into a table. It could be a view, but we typically deal with table. You could specify the column name and those names corresponding to the value that you're going to insert into. However, the name are optional. If you do not specify the column name, then the value listed here will corresponding to the physical ordering of the column in the table. We could use insert statement to add one or more row into existing table. If a table has a foreign key, the reference value must be already exist in the parent table. For instance, if you want to insert a new instructor and you put in the division number for the instructor who worked for, that division number has to exist in the division table. If you just write a division number which doesn't exist, the system would not allow you to insert this particular row into the instructor table. And this is part of the referential integrity. Okay. And however, if the null value is allowed in that foreign key column, then you are allowed to do the insert. Okay. And also insert would check certain constraints, such as a check constraint. For instance, if you want the educational level for all the instructor to be greater than number 8, then you system will check on that. If anything lower than that, then that row will not be allowed to be inserted. This is example that we have column name listed and the corresponding value for new row to be inserted into the division table. If this is the physical sequence of the column name in the division table, then you don't need to write this portion so that our insert statement looks like this. It will work. However, it is better that we are very explicit in terms of the corresponding column name. So we kind of prefer the first insert statement here. You can write multiple insert statement to insert multiple row. However, you can, such as what we have here. However, we can also insert multiple row in one insert statement. This is example of combining these two into just one insert statement. Here we have actually two new row. The value in parentheses are separated by comma. Okay, so that will work. If the one of the column has a null value, then we can put in actually null, indicating that, for instance, in this case, the director or manager of the divisions, who's supposed to be an employee number, is a null value, which means this new division does not have a director yet. Okay. And so in that case, you can still insert this row into the division table. And after that, if you select all the row from division, you will find out that this new row show up. Okay. When we execute this insert statement, we're going to see the effect, one row affected. Okay. And the output, the result grid, such as this, will not show up because the insert does not retrieve information presented to the user. It just makes the change. And so a lot of time, if you're not familiar with insert, update, and delete, you say, okay, I did something, but how come nothing happened? You have to look at the output section in my SQL Workbench, and then you will find out that the message is a one row affected. And then when you run the select statement, that newly inserted row would show up, okay, like this. If you try to insert this row again, this new row again, since it has been inserted, if you try to insert it again, you're going to get an error message. The error message will say duplicate entry D060, which means that you try to insert another row which has the same primary key of an existing row, which is the one you just inserted. And system will not allow you to do that. Okay. And if you set the default value as null, then when you insert into the division without telling your database what's the dir, which is here, the dir column is, the system will assume the null value. So we will get the null value. Okay, so you don't have to say null. And this is, I don't use it that much. This is a little bit special case. You can insert into a table based on certain columns, okay, using data retrieved from a select statement, which means you can select data using a select statement over here, and the result set will be used to insert into a table and based on corresponding column. Let's use example which make it easier to explain. Let's assume we could create a new table called teacher1, which we need the following 4 columns for this table: instructor number, first name, last name, and division, without the salary. And sometimes this teacher1 is almost equivalent of the instructor table without a salary and a few other columns. Now we can populate this new table, which is empty after the create statement, and then we can select all the rows from the instructor table for those instructors whose title is teacher, and get their instructor number, first name, last name, and division, and populate to this teacher1 table. Okay, so this is just one way for you to kind of populate an existing table with multiple rows of data based on a select statement. Update. This part is for access. We're not going to discuss it. It is possible to do it, but frankly speaking, for insert, update, and delete, it's much easier to do it using directly the SQL statement. Here, let's look at the syntax. You can update table or view. We're going to focus on update table, physical table, or base table. You can set certain column to a new value, which could be just a string, a number, an expression. After evaluation, it will end up to be a number or a string. So you can change multiple columns with an updated value, and you can use also the where clause to specify which column this set clause will be used for the update. Okay. Let's look at an example. We want to update the instructor table, and we want to change last name to Wayne. However, you probably don't want to change all the instructor's last name to Wayne. If you just stop here, you can write an update statement just like this. Then you're changing all the instructor's last name to Wayne. And therefore, it's very common you will see a where clause, which try to pinpoint that particular instructor that you want to change last name. In this case, which is instructor 21. Okay, I want to change instructor 21's last name to Wayne. Okay, and let's look at this example here. I'm also going to update instructor table to reset the salary by increase the salary by 10%, or salary times 1.1. And however, this raise is not for everybody. It's actually for all the instructor in division D010. Okay, so in this case, you may affect the salary of more than one instructor. Okay, unlike the previous one, the change will be limited to just one instructor. And certainly we assume we do have instructor number 21 exists in the system. So in MySQL, you can also update a view In SQL in general, you can update the view. However, there's certain limitation of the view. Here, it's just for MySQL specifically. If the view, you define the view based on a select statement. If that statement, that select statement has the same group by having, which we haven't discussed, group by and having, or union all, certain join statement and expression, etc., then you cannot update a view. So it's very common, typically for update, we update base table. Delete. Let's look at delete. Okay. Delete can be very destructive. Okay. You would delete from a table. You can also specify a criteria such that the delete will be limited to certain row. Without a where clause, the delete from table delete all the row. Okay. So let's look at an example. We say delete from instructor where instructor number is equal to 52. We are deleting employee or instructor 52 from the instructor table, just one row, if instructor number 52 exists. Okay. This is the one that we use the like. Hold on a second. That shouldn't have the equal statement. Delete from student where telephone number, we store it as a string, like 301 and percent sign, which means that the telephone numbers start with 301, and which means we're deleting all the students from this area code for whatever reason. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, if you don't have where clause, if you say delete from student, then you're basically delete all the existing row in the student table. Delete, update are very powerful. A lot of time, if you forgot the where clause, the changes will be applied to all the row. In most of the case, that's not what you intended to do. So you have to be very careful in using update and delete, particularly. Insert, if you add some new row, if you made a mistake, we can delete it. Okay, but for update and delete, once you've done it, it's difficult to recover. And certainly we have backup file, backup version of the database we can recover, but it's quite troublesome. Okay. When you delete from student table, you're not deleting the table, you just basically delete all the row in the table. The student table still exists. If you do want to remove the student table altogether, you have to use the drop table statement, which is a data definition language. Okay. So this is, let's say we want to remove Bob Smith. The safest way is actually find out the primary key value of Bob Smith. And here we know it's instructor number 60. So the delete statement will be delete from instructor where the instructor number equal to 60. Okay. And you're not going to see this result grid unless you say select statement. Use select statement to get it. When you run this delete statement or execute this delete statement, you're only going to see in the output area just say one row affected. Okay, in this case, one row got deleted. And use select statement to double check whether it actually been deleted. Okay, we're going to stop here. We'll come back and talk about aggregate function. So see you next time.